France's President Emmanuel Macron dropped a political bombshell with an unforeseen announcement of a snap parliamentary election. His party was defeated by the far-right populists in Sunday's European elections. The Rassemblement National party took more than 30% of the votes, double the score of Mr Macron's centrist Renaissance party. In a night of drama, the centre-right tightened its grip in the European Parliament. If the Rassemblement National does as well in the national elections as it did in the Europeans, France might have a 28-year-old Prime Minister, Jordan Bardella. To discuss this, Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, journalist at the Daily Telegraph, joins me from Paris. Anne-Elisabeth, thank you very much for giving up part of your Sunday to be with us today. What is your personal explanation for why the President made this unforeseen decision to call an election?
He decided he was going to get into trouble, parliamentary trouble, general trouble, political. Sorry, he decided he was going to be in parliamentary trouble because he doesn't have a majority already. He needs alliances, and these alliances were more and more difficult to come by. And he decided to essentially explode a massive bomb on the French political scene and to trap everybody in what I will call a speed trap. They have altogether 3 weeks, now only 2, to get themselves in order of battle, get 577 candidates, and one for each constituency, and to do that, to do electoral alliance so that the alliances can field enough candidates that are electable in those constituencies, and therefore it is a complete and holy mess. And he thinks he can swing something magical at the end of those 3 weeks, and he's about the only one to think he can.
OK, that's interesting. So you don't think, for example, that he wishes to put the right into power in Parliament in order to demonstrate that they can't govern? Is that too subtle?
I think that was true a week ago. I think he changes all the time. He has now told people that he might very well resign, which means we'd have a third election because we haven't had enough, and trigger a presidential election. But yes, part of the calculation, but only part, was to put them in a situation in which Jordan Bardella would be in the same situation that Jacques Chirac was in 1986 when the socialist president lost the legislative election. François Mitterrand called legally, he had to, constitutionally, Jacques Chirac. Jacques Chirac was a conservative leader, much more experienced than Jordan Bardella, and the result was that he ran circles around him for 2 years, and Mitterrand was re-elected. It is a very different situation right now, and I think what is fascinating about this sort of speeding up of the French political life is that events make you realize that the situation has changed. Macron's calculation right now is essentially to create chaos, I think.
Well, chaos there certainly has been on the right. I mean, despite the fact that the right did very well in the European elections, of course, there are various factions, there are various parties on the right. Now, the Reconquête party, which won 5 seats in the European Parliament, the leader immediately fired 4 of his 5 MEPs. What on earth is going on?
Well, they fired themselves. They left. He fired them after they'd left. This is almost, this was big news 3 days ago. The big news is that the left is now imploding as well as the right. So it's, and we're talking about big beasts here. Reconquête, Éric Zemmour's party, is a small party that would be a useful adjunct for any kind of election. But when when Zemmour started his presidential campaign in 2021 to try and get elected in 2022, he broke sort of all relations with Marine Le Pen so comprehensively that she doesn't want his help, she doesn't want him in the landscape. And what happened is that, therefore, the National Rally decided that they would not have an alliance with Reconquête. Reconquête said they would field, and that's Éric Zemmour decided that they would field MPs against National Rally MPs, at which stage the list leader, who was not Éric Zemmour himself, but Marion Maréchal, the niece of Marine Le Pen, who's always said that there should be union on the right, decided that she would open negotiations with her aunt and Jordan Bardella, came to the conclusion that they would work together. and told this in public during a television interview in front of Zemmour, who was not expecting it. She's leaving with 4 of their 5 MPs, and those MPs will be, if they do not have the Reconquête name, they will still be probably in the ECR group in the European Parliament. And in the meantime, the Reconquête has been sort of hollowed out by this betrayal. And I use the expression because Éric Zemmour said that Marion Maréchal was a world champion in treason. The words were flying. So that was lively. But you, as I said, you should be interested in what happened on the left, because having looked more disciplined than anybody else the first half of the week, they've now started dividing in strange things. We've got a large hard left party, which is about as Corbynista as they come, and it's La France Insoumise. They have more MPs in Parliament because they created an alliance at the time of voting 2 years ago. Now those MPs, being incumbents, should be returned, and they're finding. And the socialists, who won twice as much as La France Insoumise in the last European elections, are still not getting half as many seats. They are not happy with that. They're also not happy with the line of La France Insoumise, which is pro-Palestine, often pro-Russia, anti-capitalist, anti-colonialist, all the stuff you've had in those streets, which we've had in the same way. And many of the socialists are moderate people, and in their constituencies, this does not fly. So some of them have said they were not going there. The list leader, Raphael Glucksmann, has said cast himself out, and the former president François Hollande yesterday afternoon decided that he was going to run in his old constituency of Corrèze, and people made space for him because former president. But it still doesn't mean that La France Insoumise won't have the majority of the seats in the House. So we are facing basically the Le Penistes on one side, the Corbynistas, Chavistas, Mélenchonistes on the other, and voters in each constituency are going to have to decide. Meanwhile, just to make things more exciting, before anything before any vote, Mélenchon already decided not to reconduct, not to rename, reselect 5 of his MPs because they were not hard left enough. Some of them had marched on against anti-Semitism, which you think would be pretty sort of consensual, but no, it isn't. Some others had dared criticize him at the Politburo, and they were sent to cast in outer darkness, and other candidates are fielded against them. It is a holy mess.
Anne-Elisabeth Moutet, what a brilliant summary of the holy mess. Sounds a much more entertaining election than that going on in Britain, but absolute chaos clearly reigns.
Give them chance. Give them time.
Thank you so much.
They will. Thank you.